Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Restore the Whip to Jeremy Corbyn event, which is hosted by Momentum and Arise, a festival of Labour left ideas. We have a fantastic lineup tonight to discuss why Jeremy should be reinstated and why our focus must be uniting to fight this Tory government, which is failing to protect health and people throughout this pandemic. Due to the high level of interest, we're streaming live on YouTube and over a dozen Facebook pages. In terms of action points, please be sure to sign the change.org Restore the Whip petition at the link provided in the info on the YouTube page and on Arise's social media, and use Momentum's campaigning tools. And of course, make sure that you join Momentum. You can also share the event on Facebook to help get more people watching as we go on, and tweet your support. Please do get on those actions as soon as you can. We're going to start today with a video message from Jon Trickett MP, the member for Hemsworth. Unfortunately, Jon can't be with us today, so here is one he made earlier.
Sorry, I can't be here live on this really important rally. Let's thank Momentum. Let's thank Arise, all the speakers, and every one of you for understanding that this rally is important, because as we know, an attack on any one of us, effectively, it's an attack on all of us. And therefore, we are duty bound to act in solidarity. We're duty bound, but it's also the right thing to do morally. And let's be absolutely clear about anti-Semitism in our movement. It has been present. There's a rising tide of racism in our society and across the world. We know that. But the left have always been at the centre of every fight against racism and anti-Semitism. And it's important that we don't allow ourselves to be put into a position where somehow or another we're regarded as the problem. We aren't. We are part of the solution. So wherever we see anti-Semitism or racism, it's up to us to show that the left is very, very militant about this, and will fight it, as we have done over the years and over the decades. But more than that, the left is at the very core, in my view, of the moral and political and economic argument for a different kind of society than the one we live in now, where children are left hungry, where people are thrown on the dole queue, and millions of people work hard, play by the rules, but are left in poverty, and where war and hunger still prevail across the globe, and where our planet is under threat because of climate change as a result of rampant capitalism. All of these challenges that humanity faces, the left understands. Our analysis is correct, and it's our job to show the way, both to the Labour movement, the wider country, and the rest of the world, that the only hope for our planet and for humanity is democratic socialism. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Jon. We're going to move over quickly down to London from Hemsworth to Apsana Begum MP, who's the Member of Parliament for Poplar and Limehouse.
Thank you so much, Belle, and good evening to everybody that's tuned in today. I want to start by saying that I recognise that it's been a very difficult few weeks, if not year, for everybody who is a member of the Labour Party. I was inspired to get more involved in politics because of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. For me, it was the first time I could see possibilities in our party to democratise, to allow and to hear from voices that have not been heard in our party historically. I'm the elected representative for a constituency that was in special measures for over 20 years. Often we didn't know why we were in special measures, but under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, we were able to challenge that, and we were able to become just like every other constituency Labour Party. And I felt for the first time, as a member of the Labour Party from a BAME background, that I could finally be treated equally as a Labour Party member. That's what Jeremy Corbyn's leadership did for me. And now that I've had the honour of being the elected representative for Poplar and Limehouse and have had the honour of becoming acquainted with him, he has been so supportive and so inspiring throughout my first few months as the MP for Poplar and Limehouse. I can't express to you how much it has had a profound impact on me as an elected representative to have Jeremy Corbyn as a colleague in Parliament, navigating that complex world, and standing shoulder to shoulder with him, opposing Tory policies, opposing bills from the Tory government, which is disastrous for all communities in this country. And the Spy Cops bill was one of them, and the Overseas Operations bill was another one of them. And Jeremy Corbyn was one of the first people to turn around and say, this is not a bill that we can support. We have to oppose this. That's what we do as socialists. And he was the first person in those two scenarios that came out and said, right, we've got to get ourselves together. We've got to get organized. We have to oppose this. These are really, really bad bills that are going to have devastating impacts on our human rights. It's going to attack our communities that are most vulnerable in this country. So I know that things are very difficult for members at the moment. We, as Socialist Campaign group of MPs, recognize that. And we know that what you want as members and what you want as activists furthering socialism is for our representatives, your representatives, to recognize that, to recognize how difficult it is, and to recognize that you want to see us do more. And what we don't want, and I know that you don't want this either, you don't want to see us throw him under the bus when he is under attack, because he represents all of us. He is one of us, and an injury to one is an injury to all. So we're not going to do that. And I'm often reminded, and I just want to end on this note really quickly, that, Audre Lorde said that a master's tool will not dismantle the master's house. It might allow us to temporarily beat them at their own game, but will not allow us to bring about genuine change. Jeremy Corbyn is somebody who brought about genuine change, and we can't throw him under the bus. We stand with him, we stand together, oppose the Tories, and oppose those that are trying to bring him down and bring us all down as a result of this suspension. So I stand with you as members who are standing with Jeremy Corbyn, asking for the whip to be restored, demanding that the whip be restored, and in allyship and in solidarity, members who are upset, angry, quite rightly so, will see members of Parliament like myself standing with him and demanding that in Parliament, in the party and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Apsana. Absolutely. Jeremy Corbyn has always stood with us, and at this time we should all be standing with him. We're going to move on to our next speaker, Richard Burgon MP, who is the member for Leeds East and also the secretary of the Socialist Campaign Group. Richard?
Thanks very much, Bal, and thank you to Momentum and to Arise for tonight's event. Before I get on to Jeremy, I do want to say a few words on the totally unacceptable clampdown on discussion underway in our party. I want to express my solidarity with Young Labour, which has done exactly what it should do: represent the views of Labour's young members. In this case, with a statement in support of Jeremy, a statement passed by its elected executive. Yet for doing so, they have faced bureaucratic attempts to silence them. The elected representatives of young members of our party should not be treated in this way. And I want to say something on the rights of all Labour Party members. Labour Party members are the lifeblood of our movement. Volunteers who give up their free time to try to build a better world. Labour members need to be and deserve to be treated with respect. And the absolute most basic of members' democratic rights is that they get to decide what they discuss. Now, MPs have called for the whip to be restored to Jeremy Corbyn. Affiliated trade unions have called for the whip to be restored to Jeremy Corbyn. National Executive Committee members have called for the whip to be restored to Jeremy Corbyn. And local Labour Party members shouldn't be prevented from doing so too. Regarding Jeremy, We have a totally absurd position. Jeremy is a Labour member and an MP, yet somehow Jeremy isn't a Labour MP, a ludicrous situation that Keir has created. Jeremy has rightly been reinstated to the Labour Party following an NEC decision, a decision of our party's governing body. A hearing took place. It listened to the evidence. It took on board Jeremy's clarification. It made a decision to lift the suspension. Some may like that decision, others may not, but it must be respected and implemented across the Labour Party. That means Jeremy should immediately have the whip restored. The decision not to restore the whip not only flies in the face of Labour's own NEC hearing, it creates division when Labour should be uniting behind socialist alternatives that our communities need to the Tories' disastrous COVID response. Instead, the issue that's cutting through to the wider public at this time of crisis is internal Labour division. One recent poll shows that just 8% of the public think our party is united. There is a choice for Keir whether he wants this issue to be the issue that defines him or not. There are clearly some who want this attack on Jeremy to be part of a wider assault on the left. Tory supporting newspapers clearly want to use this issue to kick the left out of the Labour Party. A recent Sun editorial said, and I quote, "Send Corbyn and his goons packing for good." A Daily Telegraph editorial said, and I quote, "It's time to drive Corbynism out of the Labour Party altogether." So it's clear that powerful right-wing forces want to, at this moment, drive out the left from Labour. No doubt some in our party have also been encouraging Keir to have his Kinnock moment, to fight the left, to define his leadership. I'd counsel against that. We've lost the last 4 general elections, but those advocating Keir follows Kinnock's path need to remember that Kinnock lost twice with a divided party, and opening up a fight with the left means a divided party. So what's the way forward? Keir stood to be party leader, promising unity in our movement. Instead, he's created wider divisions in our party. We need to unite and to take the fight to the Tories. I believe we need to unite to force the government to change track on coronavirus, unite against the assault on working class living standards that is about to be stepped up, unite against the cuts to public sector pay, unite for the implementation of the EHRC's recommendations and to fight the wave of racism targeting Black, Jewish, Asian and others people that's likely to soar in a period of deep economic crisis. Unite to force serious action on climate change. Unite to fight for a Labour government. But there will not be unity while Jeremy is treated like this. That's not a threat. It's just a statement of fact. Many Labour Party members joined because of Jeremy. Most members still back the policy direction Jeremy pushed as leader, 74% according to this week's poll. And it's clear that many members think Keir's decision on the whip is wrong. So there's an easy and just way to sort this. The hearing has ruled, so now restore the whip to Jeremy Corbyn.
Apologies. Sorry, I had something covering that screen. Thank you very much, Richard, is what I was saying. We're going to move on to our next speaker, who's Kate Osborne, the Member of Parliament for Jarrow and one of the stars of the 2019 intake. Kate?
Thanks, Bill. And it really is an honour to be able to speak here today, to be in the company of so many fantastic comrades really is a privilege. And thank you to Arise and Momentum for hosting this event. And in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a membership in turmoil, with many of our CLPs coming out in support of Jeremy. Many are frustrated with the unnecessary distraction this has allowed away from the government, a useless Tory government hell-bent on looking after their pals, making wrong decision after wrong decision and causing so much heartache, poverty and uncertainty for so many within our communities, at a time when we need to be putting all our energies into holding this catastrophic Tory government to account. Our newly inspired grassroots activists turned out to campaign for us in the last election in their thousands, because they were sick and tired of a society rigged in favour of the few rather than the many. And we as a party cannot expect to go into 2024 on an even footing if we set about demoralising our base. And during a global pandemic, we all need to focus on the other issues so desperately affecting us all: fighting capitalism and saving our planet. We should be putting all our energy into holding this government to account. And the virus continues to spread out of control. Thousands have needlessly died. Unemployment levels not seen for decades. Homelessness rising. A pay freeze for our key public sector workers. We need to come together to unite as a movement, as a party, to oppose this awful Tory government. During the leadership campaign, Keir Starmer said, "Factionism has to go. We cannot fight the Tories if we are fighting each other." And he is right, of course. We should be getting on with the job of implementing the recommendations of the EHRC in full as soon as possible, with Jeremy in his place, in his constituency and in Westminster as a Labour MP. Jeremy inspired me and helped shape my politics like so many others. He also welcomed me into Westminster, a place that isn't particularly welcoming in so many ways. This continued focus on a politician who inspired so many risks so much. The membership needs to be heard, and the whole membership, the activists and the party, need to come together. And I want to finish by sending my solidarity to Jeremy. You can cut all the flowers, but you cannot stop spring from coming. And as Jeremy said to me recently, we walk through storms. Well, Jeremy, we will always be beside you, doing what we can to shelter you from the storm. Solidarity.
Thank you, Kate. Absolutely. Sending our solidarity to Jeremy once again. Thank you. Our next speaker is Sian Errington, who is from Arise and the Labour Assembly Against Austerity. Sian?
Thanks so much, Belle. And as Belle said, I'm a volunteer from Arise, the co-organiser of this evening's event. And Arise adds its name to all the people and organisations across the country who are calling for the Labour whip to be restored to Jeremy Corbyn, the previous leader of our party. And I'd urge everyone who's watching or listening to this event to support the petition at bit.ly/restore Corbyn whip. If everyone from this event signs and shares the petition on social media now, it would really help us reach an incredible 50,000 signatures. Please also support the initiatives that CLPD and Momentum are taking to defend our party democracy, because right now, as others have said, we really need to be taking the fight to the Tories. They failed us during the pandemic. We've got the 5th highest number of deaths in the world. And as we saw yet again on Wednesday, they're doing nothing and nowhere near enough to protect people's jobs, incomes, or our public services. They're not tackling the spiralling insecurity, poverty and inequality that did not have to be an outcome of this pandemic. And that's why we're also part of the Labour Assembly Against Austerity's People Plan. It sets out an economic alternative that's supported by MPs such as Jeremy, Rebecca Long-Bailey, Jon McDonnell and others speaking today alongside 15,000 Labour members. And we need to be arguing for that alternative to put people, planet and health first. This government cannot be let off the hook for the damage and misery they're causing. And as others have said tonight, divisive actions such as not restoring the whip to Jeremy hinder that fight against the Tories. So many thanks to everyone for taking the time to attend this evening, and please do follow Arise, a festival of Labour's left ideas, on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook, and hope to see you all at regular discussions in the future, because another world is not just possible, it's necessary, and working together we can make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sian. Absolutely, we should be focusing our energies on taking the fight to the Tories at this important time. Thank you. Our next speaker is Ian Byrne MP, who is the member for Liverpool West and Derby. He's another fantastic new MP, the 2019 intake. Ian?
Thanks, Belle, and thanks Momentum and Arise for the opportunity to say tonight I stand in complete solidarity with Jeremy Corbyn and back the call for the whip to be restored so we can represent his constituency of Islington North as a Labour MP, which he has done with passion and integrity for 4 decades. A man who Sheila Coleman of the Hills with Justice campaign said stood shoulder to shoulder with the families and survivors in the campaign for truth and justice from the very outset. And a man whose social principles I and millions others admire immensely. But now more than ever we need unity. Now more than ever we need our entire movement focused on tackling the injustices rippling to our communities. Our class needs the Labour Party and the trade union movements to have working class people's backs as they struggle with the impact of the pandemic, now more than ever. This week I have seen the need for all this firsthand. On Wednesday, I stood on the Rolls-Royce picket line with striking members of the Unite the Union locked out of their factory at Byrne, proud sisters and brothers battling to save the factory which has served Rolls-Royce and forged the excellence it's become synonymous with. If the factory is closed, it would devastate the communities of Byrne, Lancashire and the North West. And despite the huge stresses they and their families face, they actually held a food bank collection and give it to a local food bank. For me, that sums up working class solidarity, and it was an absolute joy to behold. They need a united movement to win this absolutely pivotal dispute for this country and our regions. On Friday, I attended the Fan Supporting Food Banks and Millennium Centre Food Pantry in my constituency of West Derby. I met and spoke to many families who came to access the warmth that's shown, the facility to purchase the food at a price which they could afford, and everything about this initiative. But again, it emphasised in my mind why we need to tackle the injustices of food poverty brought by decades of underinvestment in our communities and 10 years of Tory austerity, which has devastated so many families and will continue to do so as we return potentially to an 80s style economic disaster, but headed once again by a Tory government of the born to rule elite with no understanding or care for the problems facing working class people in our communities. And on Thursday, I attended my constituency CLP to go through a plan called Grow for West Derby, formulated around the right to food, using parliamentary, grassroots, local members to drive the message and the importance of the need for legislation and put the right to food into legislation, formulate mutual aid, educational programmes to upskill and assist the fight against poverty on the ground in West Derby and the city of Liverpool and beyond. I'm trying to promote a positive agenda in my CLP, promoting collective actions, focusing on mutual aid, but the division and mistrust caused by this sorry episode makes this extremely difficult. I'll be frank, our party is in a mess, and that mess was avoidable. This unjust decision should be reversed so that we can move forward collectively with a shared focus on tackling the evils of racism, poverty and injustice together. I cannot emphasise that enough. Now more than ever, we need to be acting in the interests of the millions who needed our socialist vision, painted in the manifestos of 2017 and 2019, taking the fight to the Tories, not fighting each other, tearing ourselves apart and completely losing sight of the direction and purpose our communities need in the Labour Party. To the Labour bureaucracy, I say this: let's focus on the pressing needs of the people our party was founded to represent. This meeting today should be about the right to food. This meeting should be about engaging with thousands and thousands of members, asking them to join the campaign, tackling injustice in our streets, towns and cities. So my ask is simple. Let the man who put the right to food in the 2019 manifesto help take the fight from our movement to the Tory party. Let us focus our anger and energies on the injustice of 11 million people, including millions of children unable to enjoy a hot meal in one of the richest countries on this earth. Solidarity, Jeremy Corbyn. Thanks, Belle.
Thanks, Ian. Absolutely, another strong case for why we should be focusing on the pressures that we are dealing with at the moment, and why Labour should be leading the way. Now, we all know that the election of Jeremy Corbyn as the leader of the party 5 years ago brought about a wave of a number of young people becoming more active in politics. I'm really pleased to welcome our next speaker, who is Jess Barnard, who is the chair of Young Labour.
Thank you, Belle, and thank you for having me tonight. I know that this is a really emotional time for us, and I think it's really important that we touch on why our members are members of the Labour Party and why so many of you will have tuned in tonight. And most of us in the Labour Party are people who have ourselves seen or experienced injustice at the hands of a system that at times has felt completely rigged against us. And we have dedicated our time to striving for the election of the party that was founded by and for the working classes, because we believe that this will improve the lives of millions. We don't campaign to end homelessness or for funding for mental health services or for a Green New Deal because we need a hobby. We're a collection of people who fight for a better and fairer world because we have to. And after 10 years of austerity, some of our very own members are some of the hardest hit across the UK, people that work in our public services, people that are homeless. Various generations have been hit by this Tory government. And throughout the pandemic, when Labour called on us to support our communities in response to the COVID crisis and to form community response groups, thousands of our members answered those calls for support. They went out into their communities and they responded on the front line to support in any way that they could. And that's what it means to be a Labour member. And that's what makes the actions of the leadership over the past few weeks even more bitter. It's deeply personal to us because it affects every single one of us. And unfortunately for Keir, refusing our members the right to speak up against injustice goes against the very nature of those of us in the Labour movement, and we won't be going down without a fight. I couldn't be prouder to have been elected by young people who elected me on a platform of socialism and with 71% of the vote. And I want to say to young people who went out night after night campaigning for a Labour government in 2015, 2017, 2019, all around the UK at every point in the year to deliver wins for Labour. We value you, we respect you, and Young Labour will never take you for granted. We stand by your right to have your say democratically, and we will defend your right to demand Jeremy Corbyn's reinstatement. And at a time when one of the most corrupt Tory governments in history is tearing apart the fabric of our society, outsourcing services to billionaire friends completely unqualified, risking the health of the public, freezing the pay of frontline workers, our Labour leader is choosing to define the start of his leadership term to threaten democracy in our party for members and to drive out Jeremy Corbyn, who inspired so many people and young people across the UK. Keir was elected on a platform that promised us unity and integrity, and instead is choosing now to attack democracy in our party and leave us more divided than ever. I cannot stress enough to Keir, we need a Labour Party leadership that upholds democracy in our backyard. How can we be trusted to lead a government if we cannot uphold democracy within our own party? We must reinstate Jeremy Corbyn, and Keir must take up the responsibility that he was given, which is fighting the Tories on behalf of millions of people who are desperate for change and for justice. As has already been said, an injury to one is an injury to all, and that couldn't be more truthful today. And so I'm going to ask every member to take that message and use it to stand united in your CLPs across the UK while so many members are being suspended unjustly. I know that members feel deeply frustrated and will be feeling isolated following the attacks on Jeremy and others in our party. But we have solidarity with each other. We must stand united and organised together and demand the reinstatement of Jeremy Corbyn. Because it isn't a choice. We need to get the Tories out for the millions of people that need a Labour government, and we need a transformative Labour government, and we will only achieve that by standing together and demanding justice in our party and in society.
Thank you, Jess. Absolutely. We are a member-led party and our democracy must absolutely be at the core. Our next speaker is Andrew Scattergood, who is the co-chair of Momentum. Andrew?
Thanks, Belle. Thanks very much for having me. Comrades, the attack on Jeremy Corbyn is about more than one man. It's an attack on the socialist ideals that motivate Labour Party members and that appeal to so much of the country. Only socialism offers genuine solutions to the deep problems faced by our communities today. From climate collapse to the fallout from COVID-19, there is no going back to business as usual. Our political and economic system is broken, and it's up to all of us to replace it with something better. We believe in a Green New Deal, in an economy run for and by working class people, and in a society that prioritises the happiness of everyone, not the profits of a small few. We're ready to fight for that vision against the billionaires, the media and the establishment. But right now, when we should be taking on the Tories, we're having to push back against the leadership of our party. Keir Starmer won on the basis of party unity and socialist policies. The reality is now very different. The Labour leadership has launched an anti-democratic crackdown against ordinary members. At the same time, Starmer is retreating from the popular policy platform that we all helped to build over the last 5 years, breaking the promises on which he was elected. But members are fighting back. We have seen a wave of activists demanding democracy, motions being passed in support of Corbyn, and CLPs standing up for their right to debate freely without interference from the General Secretary. We must keep passing these motions wherever we can, and Momentum will be right there behind our members. If needed, we will support them legally. No longer should the party machinery bully members with illegalities. There are other ways to fight back, and you can join nearly 10,000 people in sending an email directly to Starmer and Angela Rayner by using our lobby tool. We also need to get ready for the upcoming CLP AGMs, because the more power in our party we have, the less those that want to drive us out have. But we can't stop there, because the route to left power in the party requires a long-term strategy. We need to elect the best of our movement to Parliament to expand the Socialist Campaign Group. We've seen in the US the powerful impact that electing socialists can have, even in political parties run by centrists and captured by big money donors. Momentum will support a new generation of socialist candidates rooted in their communities. We also need to win support for transformative policy at party conference. Our goal is to make sure that Labour manifesto for the 2024 general election has meaningful solutions to the problems faced by working class communities everywhere. Not just meaningful solutions, but socialist solutions. But not just that, we also need to demand democracy in the Labour Party at next year's conference. Is it right we have an unelected General Secretary cracking down on members with no democratic mandate? Is it right that members have only 9 seats on the NEC? Is it right that MPs do not face open selections before each election? No, it isn't right. And Momentum will be demanding and defending democracy in the Labour Party over the coming years. We have a long road ahead of us, comrades, but there is no shortcut to making the Labour Party a socialist party or to getting a transformative Labour government. But we have many things in our favour. As our victory in the NEC election showed, across the country there are dedicated socialists and progressives who are motivated by the vision that Jeremy Corbyn inspired and that we are willing to fight for. So let's demand that Jeremy Corbyn have the whip reinstated. Let's resist the anti-democratic attacks, and let's get organised and build the movement we need to truly change this country. Solidarity, comrades, join momentum. Let's take this fight forward together.
Nobody said that this would be easy.
When you're trying to reverse decades of privatisation and fighting to take our services back into public hands, it doesn't just happen overnight.
When you're demanding that billionaires pay more taxes, the billionaires that run the right-wing press will attack you.
When you are taking on the big corporations and powerful individuals who've amassed obscene wealth by wrecking the climate, they will fight back.
When you're taking on the bosses demanding fair wages and workers' rights, they'll do all that they can to keep you down.
And when you're fighting for politics to be more open and democratic, the establishment will do everything they can to stop you.
As I know only too well. But this isn't anything new. The rich and the powerful will always fight to protect their interests.
So why would you give up fighting for yours?
I've been a Labour Party member for 40 years. Yeah, sometimes it's been tough.
Even when there was only a few of us keeping alive the flame of socialism in our party and then the Labour movement, I never gave up.
And there are many reasons to be hopeful.
Ideas like public ownership and a Green New Deal that were once considered extreme are now Labour Party policy.
I see communities organising together like never before, working together to change society for the better.
And now there are more left socialist MPs than there have been for decades.
In the past, Labour left members with socialist politics like mine found it almost impossible to become an MP. But through grassroots members fighting for socialism, I won my selection and became the Labour MP for Streatham.
Now from within the Labour Party, from the Houses of Parliament, I'm giving a voice to the Labour Party members who put me there and to the communities I represent.
Socialism won't happen overnight.
The leadership of the Labour Party may have changed, but our goals have not.
Together, we can and we will build a movement.
One that fights the daily injustices in our workplaces and communities and works to shape the future of our party.
That's what we'll do as MPs.
That's what we'll do as Momentum.
Join Labour.
Join Momentum.
Let's build towards socialism.
Thank you very much, Andrew and Momentum, for putting together that video. We are going to move on quickly to our next speaker, who is Ian Lavery MP, who's the Member of Parliament for Wansbeck. Ian?
Hello there, and solidarity to everyone watching, Bill. And thanks to Momentum and Arise for arranging this solidarity demonstration, as it were, with regards to Jeremy Corbyn, a great friend, a great ally of ours. And, you know, I've got to say that, like many people, I'm battle weary from 2019, but, you know, I keep saying the struggle continues, and the struggle wasn't born in 2015. The struggle for decency, the struggle for equality, the struggle to ensure that people have equal access to politics, equal access to the National Health Service, equal access to education, to a decent home, decent wages, terms and conditions, began centuries ago. I've got to start by saying I'm really disappointed when people think the option to tackle the injustices which have been outlined eloquently by people who have been on the speakers list before me. The result isn't, or the answer, or the option isn't to leave the Labour Party. If anything, we need to strengthen the numbers in the Labour Party, because we need the numbers in order to take up the challenge. And you know, when people say they're leaving and they're not happy, I've been in the party 32 years, man, and I wake up most mornings thinking, well, why on earth am I still in there? But, you know, in reality, the Labour Party is the only political party in this country that can make changes. And I feel as if when I hear of these hundreds, if not thousands of people leaving the party, as if they're leaving the battlefield at the most critical point in time. And we need people in the trenches. We need the support of ordinary, thoroughly decent people up and down this country in every single CLP, so we can fight the challenges. It isn't any good leaving other people on their own in this battle. And if we've got diminishing numbers and more diminishing numbers, and less weapons in the armory, the challenge and the struggle will be all that more difficult. So I'll just appeal to people, think about it sensibly. When people think that the answer to the instructions from Labour headquarters to CLPs is to get the parties expelled or to get individuals expelled, it isn't. We've got to have a team. We've got to be as strong as we possibly can to fight these instructions, to fight these issues which are coming down the track at a really rapid pace. Stop in the party, man. Stay in. It is difficult, but stop in and fight and help those on the front line to ensure that we get what we want. Because, you know, I'm stand with Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn stood with me. Jeremy Corbyn stood with my constituency during the miners' strike in 1984-85 when others didn't, when the police were running amok through communities up and down the country. And, you know, quite frankly, large parts of the Labour movement and indeed large parts of the trade union movement basically turned their back on the miner communities. Jeremy Corbyn didn't. Jeremy Corbyn was there. He was on the picket lines in the soup kitchens. He helped fundraise, and the political campaigning, as Jeremy is well renowned for, was exceptional. I stand with Jeremy Corbyn. Make no apologies for standing with Jeremy Corbyn. And we talk about policies. We have the finest array of policies we've ever had as a political party in 2017 and 2019, widely embraced by lots and lots of people in the communities and the constituencies which we represent. You know, we've changed the political landscape in such a short space of time. And that shows that that can be done again. So we need to fight. Don't mourn, organise, as the saying goes. And the policies we came out with in 2017 and 2019 were all I've ever campaigned for, all of my life, since being a lad of 15 years of age. I thought it was utopia. I thought we were there. And it was extremely disappointing to see the result as it actually was. But I mean, we changed the political landscape, and that's thanks to Jeremy, because Jeremy stands by our communities. Jeremy stands by the people in the communities. He stands by the CLPs. He stands for equality. He stands for justice, decency, honesty. He increases the aspiration and hope of many people in our communities. And that's why I stand with Jeremy Corbyn. Quite frankly, he's one of the most honest individuals I've ever had the pleasure to meet in politics. You know, people should recognise this. And a big shout out, Bill, to the many workers who are in dispute with their employers at this most important point in time. The Rolls-Royce workers, for example, at Barnwellswick, salute them. And Jeremy Corbyn, as the leader of the Labour Party, supports the trade unions and supports the people who are in dispute at this moment in time. Got to say, that cannot be said for all the leaders of the Labour Party. That's why I stand with Jeremy Corbyn. I think it's a very important issue to continue with. You know, the struggle didn't start in 2015, and it doesn't end in 2020. I know lots of people who have been fighting the socialist corner, the left-wing corner, for generations. And I've read about hundreds of thousands. I've read about these giants whose shoulders we stand on and what they went through. We cannot betray these people because the issues they faced all those years ago are the same issues we're facing now. And we're talking about the likes of poor housing, poor health, poor education, poor wages, terms and conditions, poverty. That's 4.1 million kids, you know. 4.1 million kids in this country living in poverty. And there's pensioner poverty, there's fuel poverty, you name it. The poverty in the sixth richest economy in the world is absolutely appalling. It's disgraceful. That's why we need to stand together. And that's why we need to start fighting the true enemy, which is the Conservative Party, which is that man in the number 10, Boris Johnson. You know, I feel at times that my time as an MP, 11 years nearly, has been basically fighting and defending the left corner from people in my own party. And the only way we've been able to fight back is by numbers. And Jeremy Corbyn himself, the man who wiped the debt of the Labour Party off because of his appeal to hundreds of thousands of people across the country, and of course, the fact that we built up a movement of up to nearly 550, possibly 600,000 people who were enthused and who wanted to talk about politics for the first time in generations. That's what Jeremy Corbyn's actually doing for the Labour Party. You know, if we want to see an increase in NHS spending, if we want to see public sector workers paid properly, not just clapping for them on a Thursday night, but we want to see key workers, NHS workers, paid properly, then we've got to stick together. Jeremy wants that to happen. If we want to see a raise in the minimum wage and ensure that this public sector pay freeze, which is coming down the track, those people, again, who are saying we clap for, will, in effect, be facing a pay freeze, despite what Rishi Sunak actually said not so many months ago. These are the people who have actually carried us through this COVID-19 pandemic. These are not the bankers, not the hedge fund owners, not the city, but the key workers. And if we want to give them great opportunity, we want to make sure they're paid properly, stand with Jeremy. We want to see more council homes built. We want to see the introduction of the green industrial revolution. Isn't it amazing that the Tories, Boris Johnson and his cronies, are actually stealing the policies from the Book of Hope? That's the 2019 manifesto. If we want to see free education for life for everyone, if we want to see the renationalisation of rail, mail and water, then we've got to stand by Jeremy. We've got to ensure that we do everything collectively together to get Jeremy back in well, he's actually in the Labour Party, but we need to get the whip reinstated for Jeremy Corbyn. The policies need to be bold, mate. I'm telling you, we need bold policies. We need policies that are actually life changers, because it's unbelievable the fact that the least well-off communities, the low-wage economy communities, are supporting Boris Johnson. So we've got something wrong, and we've got to listen to what people have got to say. We want to look at the health situation, climate change, jobs, mass unemployment. We need to educate agitate and organise. We need to make sure that Jeremy Corbyn, the man who I've mentioned 25 times in the last few minutes, has a whip reinstated. We need to ensure that we get the democracy right and the democracy back in the CLPs. So the people who put the leaflets through the letterbox, who do the mobile canvassing, who knock on the doors in December in the most abhorrent of weather, have the right to discuss issues facing the Labour Party. My message has been very, very clear, very, very strong. Jeremy Corbyn needs the whip reinstated, and we must tackle the issues coming down the track with regard to taking the democratic process away from constituency Labour parties and people who are the lifeblood of our party. Solidarity, comrades.
Thank you, Ian. And absolutely, people should not be leaving the Labour Party. One of the most fantastic things that happened after Jeremy became the leader was seeing us, grow as a party into the largest political party in Europe. That was something amazing to see. But since Jeremy has had the whip removed, we've seen more and more people are leaving, and that's absolutely not what they should be doing. They should be fighting and organising for the socialist policies to remain that we have fought so hard for. One of the other great things that came with Jeremy being elected was a renewed strength in our relationships with the trade unions. Now, the Labour Party has always been the party of trade unions, but sometimes, or there have been times in the past where we have not worked with them as we should do, and that should never have ever been the case. So I'm really pleased to invite our next speaker, who is Sarah Woolley, the General Secretary of the Bakers Union.
Thanks, Belle, and also thanks to Arise and Momentum for arranging this rally tonight. The Bakers Union were one of the first unions to support Jeremy in his leadership campaign, what now feels like a lifetime ago. The policies Jeremy and his team put together would have been life-changing for our members, who work in a generally low-paid, often with precarious or unsociable hours, industry, with many of them living hand-to-mouth. The Labour Party under Jeremy's leadership, whilst not perfect what organisation is, was one that reflected the needs of our membership and our class as a whole, focusing on truly improving the lives of the many and not the few. Over the course of the last few months, however, the party seems to have changed course, so much so that our members are starting to ask whether the party still represents them and their best interests. The apparent support for landlords, failing to stand up for tenants, abstaining from voting on the horrendous Spike Ops bill are just some of the actions that have caused our members to question who the Labour Party are actually representing, as it certainly to them doesn't feel like it is them. Finally, Keir's disgraceful decision to remove the whip from Jeremy, which went against the NEC decision to reinstate him, and the ban on CLPs discussing it or showing support for Jeremy, should really have us all asking what the hell is going on? Where has our democracy gone? National executive members are elected by members to govern the organisation between conferences, just like a trade union. And just like a trade union, one person cannot and should not unilaterally decide to overturn an executive's decision for their own purpose or for perceived political gain. It is anti-democratic, undermines the purpose and the function of the Labour movement, and is quite frankly dangerous. As you know, we at the Bakers Union will be consulting our members in January. We know that there will be many motions to our national conference in June around affiliation to the Labour Party, and we want to be prepared. We have members calling for us to disaffiliate, and we have members wanting to pull out of donating to our political fund because of what is going on in the Labour Party, which obviously then impacts our ability to campaign on the issues that directly impact our members. Whatever happens through the consultation, we will continue to campaign with and support socialist politicians like Jeremy and others on the call tonight, who stand up for the rights of our union's membership and working class communities. Solidarity with Jeremy. The whip needs to be reinstated now, so he can get back to doing what he does best, representing the working class of the UK, challenging and opposing the shoddy, at best, Tory government, and working with trade unions like ours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And we're going to move on now to our next trade union speaker, who is Matt Wrack, the General Secretary of the FBU. Matt.
Hi, thanks, Belle, and thanks for the invitation to speak. And I bring solidarity from the Fire Brigades Union to the meeting, and we send that to Jeremy Corbyn. And we're very proud to have supported him throughout his leadership and to stand with him today, because he's always stood with us as a union. And I think this issue is not about simply Jeremy Corbyn. It's also about the questions of Labour Party democracy and the rights of Labour Party members. It's not about actually whether you agree or disagree with Jeremy Corbyn. It's about democracy and the rights of Labour Party members. But the fact is that Jeremy Corbyn's election as Labour leader transformed British politics in a hugely positive way, because it meant that no more were we going to see the Tweedledum, Tweedledee politics of wealthy white men leading all the major political parties and talking very similar terms and on very similar policy issues. We were now able to debate issues of war, of austerity, of trade union rights. We were now able to debate seriously the growing climate crisis. We were able to debate issues of civil rights. And for us, this was a turning point. There's a big debate going on about Labour losing its working class heartland and traditional working class voters. And in a way, my union personifies that, because we've had two of our national strikes have been against Labour governments. One in 1977, when Jeremy Corbyn stood on picket lines with us, and one in 2002, where Jeremy Corbyn stood on picket lines with us. And after our treatment in 2002, there was a democratic debate within our organisation, and we actually voted to disaffiliate. Wasn't my position, but that was the democratic decision of our members. And what brought us back was the election in 2015 of Jeremy Corbyn as leader, because we saw that as an opportunity to pursue our agenda, our policies within the Labour Party. I think the truth is that that transformation operated on many, many levels. I recall a general secretary of an affiliated union, someone who had not supported Jeremy in the leadership campaigns, in fact, in either leadership campaign, nevertheless said that under Jeremy Corbyn, the unions had had a greater level of engagement with the Labour leadership than in his entire experience. That's a transformation we want to defend and protect and take forward under the current leadership. I think the truth is there are failings from those years, and looking at what's happening now, we can address and identify some of those. The truth is we should have pushed further on party democracy. We should have democratised the national executive. We should have insisted on implementing open selection. We should have democratised and ensured the sovereignty of our conference. We should have transformed Labour in local government. These are things that would need to be done today, and to continue the transformation of our party. The election of Jeremy Corbyn as leader transformed and drew hundreds of thousands of people into political activity for the first time, making Labour the biggest political organisation in Western Europe. And the truth is this: some people don't like that, and some people would prefer tens, indeed hundreds of thousands of Labour Party members to walk away. So my message is none of us should be walking away. The FBU is certainly not walking away. If we're in a fight, then we're going to see that fight through to the end. So comrades, let's stand together, stand to defend the policies that we won under the Corbyn leadership, stand to build and develop socialist policies that defend civil rights, defend trade union rights, defeat austerity, set out an agenda for transforming this country and this society. Let's fight for party democracy, defend Corbyn, restore the whip, but above all, organise and fight back. Solidarity. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Matt. And that's what we need to be doing, organising and fighting back. We are going to move straight on to our next speaker, who is none other than Jon McDonnell, MP, the member for Hayes and Harlington. Jon.
Thanks, Belle. Let me make this absolutely clear. I'm here, like you, because I am standing with Jeremy Corbyn.
I'm here on a personal level because Jeremy has been one of my closest friends of the, well, be over 40 years. He's one of the finest socialists I've ever met. And he's exactly as Matt has said, whenever there has been a struggle, no matter how difficult, no matter how at times politically dangerous as well, to even be associated with it, if it's right, Jeremy's been there. So this is for me, it's an act of solidarity with someone who has stood with us all the way through. But above all else, for me, it's an act of solidarity with a socialist I respect and a friend I've loved over those years. It isn't just about the reinstatement of the whip, is it, as everyone has said. I want the whip restored immediately because we need Jeremy as part of the Parliamentary Labour Party in that Commons chamber speaking on behalf of Labour. And we need his role to be respected. I don't know anybody in the PLP that has the depth of knowledge that he has on issues around foreign policy and human rights and a whole range of issues. And he should be there speaking on behalf of our party. So we want the whip restored. And as others have said, this isn't just about the restoration of the whip to Jeremy, is it? This is about democracy in our party. It's a choice that we have to recognize is taking place. Do we want a party that's led by its members democratically or controlled centrally by a centralized bureaucracy? We need now to ensure that as part of this campaign to have the whip restored, we're saying to all those across the party that we are a democratic party. We have the right to talk and discuss issues within our constituency Labour parties, and we have the right to a form of democracy that is member-led. Why is that important? Because it is through that democracy that we will determine the political direction of our party and also the policy programme that we will enter into in the next general election. That's why it's significant. So this is a discussion around the future of our party and its inherent democracy that we need to maintain. I want to just reiterate what I heard Ian Lavery saying very eloquently. The key issue here is stay and fight. I know some people have said they can't take it anymore, they're leaving. Well, look, like Ian, I come from a trade union background. I was born in Liverpool, just off Scotland Road. My dad was a trade unionist on the docks. My mum, a cleaner. When I left school, I went on the shop floor, and my trade unionism was learnt there. And yeah, at times it was tough for all of us, generations. When we got knocked down, we demonstrated our strength by getting straight back up again. We never left. We always stayed and fight. So we're urging people, no matter how, how demoralizing these last couple of months might have been, pick ourselves up, stay and fight, but do more than that. Do more than that. Recruit, that's the first thing. And secondly, let's not just have a defensive campaign around democracy in our party. Let us now agree a programme, a manifesto for democracy in our party that we campaign for in these coming months, in the run-up to the next Labour Party conference, because we've recognised now the democratic deficits that there are in our party that we have to address. So I just say to people, don't just stay in the party, attend every meeting you possibly can, and then populate every office you can. When there's an election, stand for it and get elected, and make sure and using those elected positions that you voice the will of the membership itself. And let me just say this also, support one another. Support one another with advice and guidance. Never lead with our chins. Make sure we deal with this effectively, but also support one another practically. And those people who have, unfortunately, there's been some disciplinary action taken against, we'll seek to ensure that they get proper advice and assistance through Momentum and other organisations as well. But also support each other emotionally. A lot of people have been very distressed at the action that's been taken against them. So let's support one another in that way. And we need to communicate as well effectively through social media and other mechanisms about what's happening on the ground so that we can rally resources and support for individuals, for constituencies. And yes, in that form of communication, get our message across to the Labour leadership about our views about, well, first of all, yeah, Jeremy being restored to the whip, but also our views about the nature of the democracy in our party in the future. Can I say also, look, beware of sectarianism. There are some who've always wanted to recruit members from the Labour Party to set up an alternative party, etc. And to be honest, we've dealt with it over the years, and I don't blame them. I just think they're wrong. We need to avoid any forms of sectarianism. There will be some agents provocateurs from elsewhere who will try and split us as well. We've got to hold together and unite on all of this. Let me just finally say this, and it's the point that others have made over the years, really. Nobody ever said achieving socialism would be easy. No one said that. We knew at times it will be tough. And Labour has always been a terrain of struggle. It is genuinely a broad church, where at different times we've had social reformers and liberals, and with socialists and others, and trade union economistic objectives solely, and trade unions who want to change the world as well. And there's always been a battle of ideas in the party and a battle of organisation. And at different times, different groups have won that battle. The important thing for me as a socialist on the left of the party is to make sure you stick around, you fight that battle, and you win, and you convince people of our ideas, and you win the organisational battle. I just do that because actually the Labour Party and the trade union movement are actually still the only vehicle in which we'll achieve socialist change in this country. And that's why it is critical to stay and fight, campaign for Jeremy's reinstatement, and let's now launch a campaign for really democratising our party. Solidarity.
Thank you very much, Jon. Absolutely. We need to not just be staying and grinning and bearing it, but continue to work towards the socialist future that we all hope for. Well, before I introduce our last speaker, I want to thank everybody who's participated tonight, who continues to show solidarity with Jeremy Corbyn, and of course to Momentum and Arise for organising this event. We know that we absolutely have important work to do to get the whip restored for Jeremy, to support party democracy and build the left and take the fight to the Tories. We have to keep working to insist there is no return to business as usual when it comes to our economy and politics, and to argue for the immediate public health and economic support measures that people so desperately need in this country. Now, our final speaker is the fantastic Diane Abbott MP, the Member of Parliament for Hackney North and Stoke Newington. No one can tell us we haven't brought you all of the big names this evening. Diane.
Thank you very much, Belle. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Very good. I'm here tonight to say unequivocally that I stand with Jeremy Corbyn. And if the General Secretary of the Labour Party is watching us tonight, he can write that down. He's welcome. And I'm here tonight to call for the restoration of the parliamentary whip to Jeremy Corbyn. So he is once again officially a Labour MP. But let me just say this. Jeremy himself is not leaving the party. The party he's been a member of since he was a teenager and has contributed so much to, whether as a councillor, a backbench member of parliament, or as leader. But he's not leaving, and neither should anybody else go. We are here to stay, here to fight. And one of the reasons why it's so important that the whip is restored to Jeremy Corbyn is we want a united party. There are tens of thousands of party members who are very distressed and disturbed by the whip being removed by Jeremy. Removing the whip from Jeremy is not a way to build unity. We want to build unity. We want a strong party. We want to restore the whip to Jeremy. And with a united, strong party, we want to fight anti-Semitism. We want to fight racism. And above all, we want to fight this Tory government. But as you've heard, this isn't just about one individual. This campaign to have the whip restored to Jeremy is about the future of the left, and it's about the future of party democracy. You all have heard last week that constituency parties got advice from our General Secretary saying they couldn't discuss the removal of the whip, they couldn't discuss why the General Secretary had done that. But it wasn't advice, it was an instruction. And the letter or the communication I saw made it very clear that if you didn't ban the discussions they were talking about, you would find yourself, whether as an individual member or even maybe a whole constituency party, suspended. Now, advice means that you've got the option not to take the advice. What local party members have been issued with is an instruction. And I have to say that I have never known a time when paid Labour Party bureaucrats could tell members what to discuss. So long as what members are discussing is within the law, what is the point of being a Labour Party member if you're not free to discuss political issues? And on the issue of the whip being removed from Jeremy, the media was discussing it, the commentators were discussing it, right-wing MPs were discussing it. The only people apparently who are not supposed to discuss it are ordinary Labour Party members. Well, I think we need to stand up for democracy. And I think we need to remind our bureaucrats at headquarters that party members don't work for headquarters bureaucrats. Headquarters bureaucrats work for party members. It is you, after all, with your subs and your fundraising, that pay their salaries. We are at a moment of crisis for working people. There is the international pandemic, coronavirus pandemic that we're facing, which has been handled so appallingly by this Tory government. There were other countries which pursued a policy of zero COVID, eliminating COVID altogether, New Zealand, South Korea, other countries on the Pacific Rim, and it worked. But instead, our government, just like actually another neoliberal government led by Trump in America, our government mishandled it and turned a public health crisis into an economic crisis. And it will be ordinary people, ordinary working people, both black and white, who will suffer the most, both from the continuing public health crisis and for the economic crisis. And the Tories have made it clear. That nice Rishi Sunak has made it clear that in the end, he expects ordinary people to pay the economic price for the cost of the pandemic. So this country has never needed a Labour government more. It's never needed a unified Labour Party more. And one of the important things to do to secure that unity is to restore the whip to Jeremy Corbyn. I stand with Jeremy Corbyn. Solidarity.
Thank you very much, Diane, as do we all. Thank you once again, everybody, for joining today, showing solidarity with Jeremy. Please make sure that you've taken the actions that we discussed earlier in terms of signing up to the petition and getting others to do that too. Join Momentum, as you've seen, has come up along the bottom. Please make sure you're a part of everything that we're doing to lead the fight back. Thank you once again and have a lovely evening.